The fight against corruption remains a critical component of Nigeria's national development agenda. Over the years, successive administrations have introduced various policies, legislative reforms, and institutional frameworks to promote transparency, accountability, and good governance across the public and private sectors. In a significant boost to the country's anti-corruption efforts, Nigeria recently received an International Anti-Corruption Award in recognition of its commitment to strengthening transparency, asset recovery, and accountability. The recognition has been described as an acknowledgement of the country's continued reforms, while also serving as a challenge to sustain the momentum in the fight against graft. Anti-corruption agencies such as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, the Code of Conduct Bureau, CCB, and other relevant institutions have continued to investigate, prosecute, and recover proceeds from crime, while strengthening preventive measures against corruption in recent years. Nigeria has recorded notable achievements in asset recovery, the digitization of government services, Treasury's single account ESA implementation, beneficial ownership transparency, open contracting initiatives, and the strengthening of anti-money laundering frameworks. These efforts have been driven by government institutions, civil society organizations, development partners, the media, of course, and active citizen engagement. Despite these gains, many observers believe that significant challenges remain. Issues such as delays in the prosecution of high-profile cases, procurement irregularities, weak institutional capacity, political interference, and inadequate public accountability continue to affect the effectiveness of the country's anti-graft campaign. Experts maintain that consolidating the gains recorded will require stronger institutions, an independent judiciary, improved law enforcement, greater transparency in public finance management, effective whistleblower protection, international cooperation, and sustained citizen participation. On this episode of Nigeria Today, we will examine Nigeria's progress in the fight against corruption, the significance of the country's recent anti-corruption award, the remaining challenges, and the practical steps required to build a more transparent and accountable society. Thanks for joining us on the program. I am Ugolor Clinton. Now, with me in the studio to discuss the progress in anti-graft is Ahmed Abubakar Tanimu. He's a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. It's a pleasure to have you on
Thank you for having me.
And joining us via Zoom is Reverend David Ugolor. He's Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEEJ. And he's also a member of the Interim Executive Council of the Non-State Actors, NSA, of the African Union Advisory Board Against Corruption, AUABC, Benin. Thanks for joining us on Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much.
So I will start with you, Tanimu. Tell us how significant is Nigeria's recent International Anti-Corruption Award? And what does it say about the country's anti-graft efforts?
It says a lot and is very significant. Significant in the sense that you look at the war against corruption from the Global Perception Index. A lot of countries all over the world, they look at Nigeria as a haven of corrupt practices in the way we conduct our businesses and the incidences of and the money laundering activities over time. But this award is coming from a very reputable organ of the United Nations, the Egmont Group. You see, it's not like the normal award that you see flying around, because it's so bad that people even tend to look at award these days with suspicion. You see somebody that is not performing, and the next time you see him being awarded, you wonder, is it that they are awarding non-performers? But at least the level of credibility in this contest, recoveries have been made. You go to various banks, I've been opportune to participate in some of at the private level. You see that individuals, before now, We don't know how they find their ways into our banking sectors. People that you know they are not doing any business, you've seen them having billions in their account. But the systems now are being strengthened in the sense that you have check and balances control in various layers. And this, what this will naturally result is that if monies are sent into your account and you cannot give sufficient evidence to show that you own those money, the CBN has even given banks circular that all such kind of money should be sent to the, should be warehoused in the CBN pending when proper investigation. And we've seen instances where such kind of monies were sent back to the origin where the money came from. So it shows that huge recoveries are being made. Our system are being optimized, but a lot needs to be done. So the award is just the stepping stone for more to come.
Thank you very much. Now, Reverend David Ugolor, well, before you go ahead, I know earlier on the introduction, the AUABC, Benin, not Benin, actually, I think that was a mistake on my own part. So, listening to what Tanemu just said in his opening remark, of course, from what he said, there's been more transparency, you know, in the fight actually against corruption,
Absolutely.
right? From what you said.
Absolutely.
Now, Reverend Ugolor, how would you assess the Nigeria's progress in the fight against corruption? Over the past few years, I recall that you've been at the forefront in, talking about this asset recovery. And of course, there's been so much that I know that, that you've been doing with your own organization at the forefront. So tell us, how would you assess the effort of the country so far?
Thank you very much. Again, I want to thank my colleague who incidentally, I'm not in Abuja today. We have always appeared on the panel. He has done very well by giving a kind of context, which I will build on. And I also want to thank NTA for inviting us to discuss this issue. You know, when a country receives this kind of award or they recognize it internationally for their effort, no doubt the country celebrates it, because it provides an opportunity to create incentive for the agencies that are concerned to, again, sustain their commitment. And so I will join with NFIU, EFCC to, again, congratulate this government for this achievement, which we read from the newspaper today. And I think it's something we must also commend the leadership of NFIU and commend the leadership of EFCC for doing the fantastic work. And, when we look at the political context of the country, it's really not very easy in our own complex situation to record this achievement. I won't put that as a kind of a contest. Nigeria success on asset recovery is a global gold standard. I haven't worked in the asset recovery issues for the past 30 years. I can point it out very clearly that the success we have recorded in retrieving or recovering some of these assets stashed in Western Bank and in different jurisdictions. Nigeria is a country that every other country looks to, particularly when you look at the standard setting processes. But when you look at GFA principle, the Global Forum on Asset Recovery initiative in the US that brought Nigeria and other countries, US and UK together, that came out to design the Global Forum initiative around asset recovery. And then when you also look at the London Anti-Corruption Summit, where Nigeria also made several commitments. After that commitment, today we can look back with all the several recovery Nigeria have recorded so far. If you compare them to other jurisdictions in Africa and other Western countries, you will see that Nigeria have really done very well. And that wouldn't have happened without the agency like EFCC and NFIU, particularly the current leadership who are working collaboratively. And I like that language that was explicitly identified in the press statement, that the award is to, again, send a signal of the interagency cooperation that exists between NFIU and EFCC. Because without that cooperation, there's no way you can tackle financial crime. And if you look, this award that the press statement make reference to is about financial intelligence. If we are to tackle the problem of terrorism, tackle the problem of poverty, say it all, any development issues in Nigeria, you must tackle the issue of financial crime. And that's why this agency work is very important. That's why I see this award as not just an award for financial crime, it's an award to again re-emphasize that Nigeria has responsibility to continue to put more resources and more effort in fighting financial crime in the country.
Thank you very much, Reverend Ugolor. Now, of course, like what you said, is very, very important. We also give ourselves a pat on the back probably when something good happens. Sure. We celebrate ourselves, not just condemning everything we do. At least, like you said, there's been a lot of progress that has been recorded. But then again, how effective, have legal and institutional reforms been in strengthening the country's anti-graft framework?
For now, what we have is what we are working with. There are a lot of lacunas, there are a lot of loopholes, and those that are experts in the game, when I mean experts, including the various stakeholders, coming from lawyers and the enforcers, the ICPC, EFCC, NIFU, the banks, those regulating the banks. A lot more needs to be done. Achieving success doesn't mean that, or getting an award doesn't mean that what we are all fighting against, that's corruption, is not still prevalent. It's still prevalent, and that's what when you look at this award, ordinarily would have been celebrated much more if the living standard of individuals is reflected. But now you are seeing a paradox. The more we are making success in this regard, corruption in the other sphere is still prevalent. But that does not mean that work is not going on. Work is going on. A lot of efforts have been made. A lot of optimization is going on currently, but we need to do much more. Let me share an example with you. I happen to represent a client of mine is into oil and gas, and we're part of just to write a statement in one of these anti-graft agencies. We discovered that school that has all been, the NIFU have been shouting and making, I can bear witness, they've done a lot to get people to be on board. I see a company doing a turnover of almost $1 billion and still do not have school to this point. What is lacking is because there's no interagency synchronization and synergy. Government institution awarding contracts, they should demand so much more of, where's your school certificate? Have you been rendering return? We should not look at punitive approach. We should rather look at a proactive step to encourage all stakeholders. By the time we realize that these things are being done for the healthiness and health position, and so that will be perceived rightly in the international climate. If they are seeing Nigerians and the Nigerian institution as aiding and abetting corrupt practices, being because of our politicians, it will equally reflect in our business dealing. Right now, before now, it's even difficult for Nigerians to open ordinary PayPal accounts. Some sites you want to go, once the IP address is reflecting Nigeria, they just take you off. All this will resolve it if the various institutions and all stakeholders continue to play more role. We talk about institution and individual, so that we now look at what are the consequences of those that have been adjourned to be corrupt, abusing the system. How expeditious are their adjudication and sentencing them? How fair? You have a judgment of a former minister, it takes maybe less than a very short while, maybe a year or two, is in prison. And we have other former governors, ministers, their cases have been lingering in our courts. Right now, there is a lot of, in the new Administration of Criminal Justice Act, apart from the one that we have, that has been in operation since 2015, now there has been an amendment. So we equally encourage the judiciary. They are optimizing a lot of processes, case management. The whole process is being digitalized, is being optimized, but much more needs to be done so that we go in sync with receiving award on the one hand, and then we would like to see the effects of those awards being reflected on the operations of our institutions, impacting positively. We will have more reduced incidences of kidnapping, because some of those corrupt and illicit funds goes to financing terrorism, banditry, any money that you cannot account for, that the money trail will not lead to where the money is definitely going to exacerbate the incidences of crime that is already prevailing in the country.
Thank you very much, Tanimu. We're going to take a breather here, and this conversation will continue in a moment. Don't go away.
the implementation of the ruling is also dependent on another aspect or another arm of government.
Nowhere in the world will allow under digital economy for banks not to be dispensing domestic currency in that economy.
What will make this one different?
We want to know what they do as occupation. All of these are attributes that are questions have been designed to investigate.
In a few days to come, you see that we are all around their own crannies and everywhere in Nigeria, telling people to cooperate.
Welcome to Nigeria Today. Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and of course we are now looking at the progress made in fighting insecurity. And I still have my guests here in the studio, and joining me via Zoom is Reverend David Ugolor. Is still there with us. Now, David, of course, we're not talking of the progress in fighting insecurity, and of course this one is not far from what we are talking about here, talking about the progress made in anti-graft and all of that. So tell us, what are the challenges really that that is still hindering the fight against corruption, insecurity, and all of that in Nigeria today?
Well, like I said earlier on, if the driver for the insecurity and crisis we have in the country today is issue of finance. So if you are to tackle issue of terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, all these, you need to deal with the issue of the national financial system. So in designing our national financial architecture, we have to recognize that why institutions like NFIU, EFCC, and other anti-corruption law enforcement agency need to increase their collaborations to ensure that Nigeria total compliance to the anti-money laundering regime is strong and effective. If terrorists and kidnappers continue to use the financial system to move the benefit of their trade, and it's easier for them to move it across border, it will be difficult to end the kidnapping and the insecurity in the country, because ultimately there is an incentive to continue to be involved in the enterprise. And if you look the kidnapping and the insecurity enterprise today in Nigeria, many stakeholders are benefiting from it. And the only unfortunate aspect is that the victim who are suffering, I come from a community called Ugolor in Etiop West local government area in Delta State in Nigeria. As we speak, women are no longer able to go to the farm. And you could imagine the implication for feeding of the people in that community. As we speak, just a few days ago, a man and the wife were coming from the farm. These bandits accosted them and killed the man and took the woman away. And the family have to pay 2.5 million naira before they were able to release the woman. But the man is gone. And then a woman with a child of less than 9 years old was kidnapped. They paid the sum of 5 million naira. That's just one day, within one period. And so the corridor from Benin to Ugara to Ologbo down to Saple is now a big insecure environment. And so these resources that is coming out of this trade moves eventually through the financial system. And so the work and effort of organizations like NFIU to continue to look at the banking system to see that when suspicious transactions happen, then they will be able to report so that the agencies that are concerned can take immediate action. It is very important. And that's why I feel that in tackling the challenge of terrorism and banditry and kidnapping in Nigeria, the Nigerian government must continue to support NFIU, support EFCC, because unexplained wealth order framework, people are in the community. You see
Okay.
them, they suddenly buy a car, suddenly build a house.
Thank
These
you
are
very much,
suspicious.
Reverend Ugolor. Well, I'll have to stop you there so that we also hear from Tanimo here in the studio. Tanimo, today, of course, our security agencies recorded a success in the release of the children and the teachers in Oyo State, in Uriri, in Oyo State. Now, from your own perspective, what do you think first that should be done to discontinue these kinds of occurrances?
You see, we are all elated, we are all relieved. Before now, the burden has been on our on every Nigerian. So a lot of people are worried. We are celebrating the government of Oyo State and the federal government for the effort. At least we have the about 40 students and their teachers. We are happy to receive them. We should now look inward. Other people are still in captivity. The whole issue of banditry, kidnapping is being sustained because of the gains, financial gains. And how do they root those systems? So if we are if we are commending the government for releasing, it's high time equally that we need complete disclosure. What led to their release? Was it that it was the military intervention? We are not saying they should disclose now, but in subsequent time.
They were rescued by the security operatives. Okay. So we are working with what we have.
So with what we have, we believe so, and we encourage them to do more. Other efforts too should be extended across board. The incentive to want to kidnap our children, our mothers, our sisters, is what we need to discourage. And you can only do that if this financial system, both the banking, the unbanked, definitely the digital aspect, it should encourage. That's why some of us are not too comfortable with all those taxes on electronic transfers and the rest. When you digitalize your processes, there's less of human intervention. You'll be able to monitor the trail. Those kidnappers and the bandits in the book, where are they? How do they launder their money? Because the humongous monies they made must naturally pass through one system or the other. If those systems are checked, the money trail they made it very sustainable that you can investigate to the tail end. Most of our currencies are digitalized. There's serial number in it. So the security agencies should optimize their operation to the extent that they can trace the flow of money, the trail, and with that, the incidences of kidnapping, banditry will be significantly reduced. But I must commend the federal government for the recorded successes in getting the captive from Orire in Oyo. They should equally focus attention in other states like Zamfara, Kebbi, Maiduguri. This is an ongoing thing, and it has really hampered businesses across Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Tanimo. Now, Reverend Ugolor, now talk to us. What lessons can Nigeria learn from other countries out there, from other clans, that have achieved sustainable success in combating corruption, terrorism? So what can we learn from them, and how can we, replicate it here in our country so that we have, in addition to the successes we've recorded, to sustain and even do more?
Well, first, like I said earlier on, the key agencies that will really help to ensure that there's compliance to the anti-money laundering regime in Nigeria is NFIU, EFCC, and ICPC, and other law enforcement, anti-corruption law enforcement agency. The government need to invest in them in terms of human resources, in terms of technical support, training, to expose them to modern techniques of gathering intelligence, which helps really to tackle the problem of terrorism and banditry and kidnapping. Like the case of what has happened in Oyo, there are lessons to be drawn from what has happened, and government need to draw lessons from it, because as we celebrate the return of those captured children, we must not fail to learn from it. One is data. Two is strengthening the anti-corruption agency to keep an eye on those who are part of this whole process. They lives in our community, they lives in our town, they lives in our state. They are very visible in terms of their property and asset. And that's why the reason why we are appealing that best practice internationally is that governments are now putting in policies around beneficial ownership so that we know who owns what, particularly properties. Because ultimately at the end, those who perpetrate this crime and involved in this terrorism, they want something like property. They want to purchase things, and those things can be traced to them, and we can easily unpack who is involved in this crime across the country. But when there is no policy of transparency around ownership of assets, it becomes very difficult. And these are lessons we can draw from UK and other jurisdictions that are fighting terrorism and crime in their country.
Thank you so much.
And
thank you very much, David Ugolor. We have, I wish we had more time to talk more on that, but thank you so much for your insight, your insightful contributions. Reverend David Ugolor is Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEEJ. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And here in the studio, we have Ahmed Abubakar Tanim, who is a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having
your
me.
Contributions.
Always a delight being here.
And thank you for being part of the program. I am Ikaria Clinton. Have a wonderful weekend.